Morning, Christine. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, thanks. I thought I unmuted it. I'm like, no technical difficulties now.
All right.
I'm just checking for public participation. I haven't seen any yet.
What'd you say?
I said I was looking for public participation, but I haven't seen any. I was just double checking.
I'd be surprised if we get anyone at 7 a.m.
I know. Well, we have our coffee, so we're good.
Exactly. If you see me disappear out of screen, you'll know where I went.
Okay. I know I sat down, I got all settled and I'm like, oh, I left my coffee cup by the coffee pot. That's not good.
Yeah, I may need a bigger cup. It should be
I
a
know.
quick meeting. Should be a pretty quick meeting though, right?
It should. The agenda's fairly short and straightforward. So I don't imagine it'll be very lengthy. You enjoying this hot weather?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I'm inside most of the time, and when I'm not, I'm either in the lake or the pool. So
That's nice. That's
yeah,
nice.
so for the most part, it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Now my kids, on the other hand, they're dying.
Are they?
In soccer, well,
Oh,
soccer
yeah,
practices at 10
Yeah.
o'clock or 4. Abby has hers sometimes at like 4 p.m. and it's just a killer.
It is.
So that's been a struggle for both the kids, but
Yeah. Oh, I remember living through that with all my girls too. And when it was brutally hot, it would never fail. We would have like a Strongsville soccer tournament, right?
right.
And they would, yeah, absolutely. But I moved. And so my new condo complex has a pool, which they have not opened. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm dying.
I don't understand that at all.
Yeah,
But-
I'm hoping they'll open it soon. Just on the weekend, it would be nice to be able to go over there a little bit.
Well, I just, if you're outside, I don't see what the point is. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I know. We could talk on and on and on.
Won't get anywhere. Won't get anywhere. Won't make a difference. It doesn't seem so.
I know.
It's just frustrating. So I was looking at the report. Is any of that just timing where we ended up with way more cash? Because I thought we were going to take a butt whooping with the COVID-19, or I saw the CARES Act is in there, but how much is that?
The CARES Act was around $300,000.
So when you say that, is that the PPP loan that you got, or is that different financing that came through?
It might be part of the same federal stimulus package, but our portion of that, see, we didn't get PPE, right? That was just for businesses. So
did you see all the Catholic schools that got hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yes.
It was in the paper.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like the Catholic Church doesn't have a $4 billion war chest, that they can stick it out a little bit.
Exactly.
And I mean, Catholic.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I know. I get it. Believe me, I get it. Well, I had a meeting, like a 4 o'clock meeting yesterday with a couple of treasurers talking, and one of them was from Bexley. And he was saying, with some of their extra funding, a lot of it's going to St. Charles, CSG. I mean, it's all really kind of difficult, right? You want to be fair and equitable, but then you've got to look at, well, what are the real needs and where are they? So, but part of our issue too, and I have tried to, make everybody understand this, and, the staff really did a good job. As soon as this COVID thing started, let's close POs we don't need, because that artificially ties up money that we don't know if we're going to spend or not. So having these big, huge purchase orders out there, skews our sense of where we really are.
Donovan going with the outdoors.
Good
Yeah.
morning.
Nice out. The kids are still asleep, and I like to keep it that way.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Morning.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Hey, Dylan.
Excuse me 1 second. Oh my God, it's so hot in here. Don't be in the bathroom.
Oh,
I had to turn my fan on. It's hot in here already.
it feels good in the office.
Does it? Oh, yes, it looks
as
good.
opposed, right?
Yes, as opposed to yesterday. Did you see Mr. Brown's chat?
I did. Mr.
Okay.
Brown, can you hear us? You know what, Mr. Shoemaker, if you can send him another invite. And then use that top link.
Did we lose our meeting? Are you still there?
Yep,
I lost my video.
really?
Oh,
Are we
wait, I just got you back. Nope, I
Yeah.
found you. But I went to click back on it and it said, you know, start new meeting. I'm like, wait, that's not right. I'm good. I just need more coffee.
Yeah, we have, it's listing Mr. Brown as present.
Can't
Right
hear him.
there.
Ah,
There he
there you
is.
go.
There he is. It might be your camera, Mr. Brown. But hopefully we can hear you as well.
Okay.
There he is.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Hello? All right,
Yeah.
perfect. I'm not sure why. It worked perfect yesterday, but this morning having some difficulties.
Of course.
Jonathan will not be joining us today. He was unable to get off. He had a work issue, so he wasn't able to get away.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like it's that time. It's just after 7, so we're resolved all of our technical difficulties, I believe. We can go ahead and call the meeting to order and roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Brooks, Mr. Cooper,
Here.
Mr. Homan,
Here.
and we know Mr. Stahl is absent. Oh, there's.
Did we know Mr. Brooks, has he joined us?
I am here.
Yes, he
Okay.
did.
Good morning, Mr. Brooks.
And immediately going to be put on the spot.
Curtis, if
For
you're
the-
ready, please lead us in a period of meditation and the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Please join me in a period of meditation. Please join me in the pledge to the allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the United States of America and to
to the republic
for which it stands,
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to consider and adopt this agenda as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Holman, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cooper, any discussion or suggested changes? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes,
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan.
Yes.
All right, moving on, everyone's had to review the minutes from the previous meeting of June 23rd. Unless there are changes requested, I have a motion to those minutes as presented.
so moved.
All right, Mr. Brooks, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Holman, roll call, please.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes,
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Homan,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes. Did we have anyone provide last minute requests for participation, Christine?
No, we did not.
Okay. We'll move on then to the treasurer's report.
Okay, just a very brief report, kind of giving you an overview of where we ended the fiscal year. Our revenue was just about on target, was about 3/4 of a percentage point above, a little over $100,000. Thankfully, expenditures came in under projections. And part of that was due to the federal CARES funding we received. We were able to backdate some expenditures. And if you recall, as soon as the shutdown occurred, we did have a large capital expenditure for Chromebooks. So we were able to replace those general fund expenditures with CARES funding, as well as, closing out all the rest of the purchase orders, which sometimes, give us a little bit of a false sense of where we are expenditure wise until everything is settled. So at the end of the fiscal year, we ended a little over $500,000 to the positive above our forecast. So I'm really pleased with that. I think we ended in a really good spot despite all of our upheaval during these last few months. And the only other thing I want to mention is that fee payment system is now up and running. I'm getting online. I got my login, so I'm going to get online today and test it and make sure all the old balances carried over. And then we'll communicate with parents and hopefully they'll start using that and that'll be a nice convenience for them.
So Christine, I thought I saw a note of yours that said outstanding fees were $115,000.
Yes.
So if I take 115, is that divided by 45? Like, is that all the pay to participate, or is that all school fees, lunch fees? Is that like all inclusive or what?
Yeah, I think that's all inclusive of all fees from all grade levels.
So do we actually have recourse on that? I mean, on sports, if you don't pay, you don't play.
Absolutely.
But like,
And-
if on the other stuff, is it just dead, like non-collectible? Like, should we even, I don't know.
I would not say that it's uncollectible. I mean, it's definitely a valid receivable, right? Now, collection can be sometimes difficult because we don't have a lot of leverage always, especially at the younger grade levels. But I think what needs to happen is just real clear, constant communication with folks. I think sometimes they just forget about those fees. And if at the building level, they're not pushing that and keeping that in the forefront. And I think that that's what's happened over the years. It kind of was assumed those fees would just roll over and we would worry about it in 12th grade. Well, I'd kind of like to accelerate that. So I'm optimistic that a lot of that will be collectible and that, parents will be willing and are willing to make good on the fees that they owe. Maybe they just need to be reminded.
So when they go in to log in this year and pay online, will it show their outstanding balance?
It will, and I'm going in to test that today to make sure that imported correctly after I got all the fees from Dazzle from each of the buildings, sent that over. So I'm going to test that out.
And I assume everything's going to be a credit card payment?
Yeah, they can use e-checks like debit payments directly from the checking account or credit cards.
So from our standpoint, what kind of fee do we get charged on the credit cards?
We only split the fee with the parent. We're paying, I think, 1.9%. We're paying exactly the setup that we do on the lunch fee payments.
Okay.
So, and because we do the lunch fee payments, I don't think this will be, very odd. Won't be a stretch for most people.
Well, I know for a lot of small businesses that don't do that much credit cards, like 3%. I mean, that's a big number. So that's what I was
exactly. So I'll keep you posted and let you know how that is running and what sort of collections we have over the next month or two.
Okay, do I have a motion to consider and approve routine items 7.1 through 7.8?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Brooks?
Was it Mr. Brooks or Mr. Cooper that made the first?
Made the first.
Okay, so Mr. Brown, I show Mr. Cooper and Mr. Holman
Cooper
second.
made the motion, Brooks second. Any 7.8?
It looks like we might have lost Mr. Brown's audio.
It may have. Oh, there's a chat.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
I was just switching connection because it's been a little garbled. Sorry about that. Do we have any other questions or comments regarding routine items 7.1 through 7.8? There are none. Go ahead and move on to roll call, please.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Holman,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to items 7.10 or 7.9 through 7.10. I have a motion to consider business items 7.9 through 7.10.
So moved.
Mr. Brooks, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Holman? Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Holman,
Yeah.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to superintendent's report. Dr. Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. As you know, it's been a significantly challenging and busy time over the last couple of weeks. Last week, at the end of last week, the Ohio Department of Education and the governor and the Ohio Department of Health released guidelines for school districts to reopen next month. I'll stress the word guidelines as the state essentially passed the oversight of these guidelines and approval of any district's plans locally to each county's health department. And so As we communicated out from a district last Thursday, it's good to have this guidance. We've been working on this, of course, over the last couple of months, but now we had to compare that with what our plan looked like, and then also consult Madison County Public Health. That consultation took place earlier this week, and we received some guidelines from Madison County Public Health that I've been able to share with all of you. We'll talk about those a little bit in a minute, but I'd like to give you a quick update. Our athletic teams have been practicing either in small groups and as we've moved through phases a little bit larger for about 5 weeks now. Those practices from a safety standpoint, I believe have been a success. We did have some procedures for monitoring the health of our student athletes, our coaches, and anyone associated. At times when we, through an abundance of caution, if there was anyone that was exhibiting symptoms, we just went through our normal protocols. We have not developed any issues where we had any cases of COVID-19 with any of our student athletes or coaches. So I want to applaud our student athletes, our coaches, our families, Mr. Wolverton, Mr. Helmkamp, as they've looked to implement that plan. As all of you know, that's a work in progress. And I'm certainly pleased to see that those things are the safety measures that we have been put in place are being taken seriously and are being implemented with integrity on a daily basis. A couple of the requirements from MCPH that I want to highlight and that I've previously updated the board about through some discussions with Health Commissioner Cook and the local superintendents. The mandatory 6-foot social distancing requirement that was originally in place in local guidelines has been taken back a bit. And that is to say that schools are given a little bit more flexibility to try to maintain proper distance between anyone that would be on campus. But as we know, it would be very difficult to try to bring back all students every day if there was a requirement that 6-foot social distancing be in place. And so the language that we have been discussing would allow for, we think, and this certainly, having received this a couple of days, needs more exploration, but we think would allow us to bring our students back on campus beginning in August. Now, the other requirement that I do want to highlight, as I mentioned, we received guidelines from the Ohio Department of Health and guidelines from the Ohio Department of Education. We received a mandate from Madison County Public Health that anyone within our campus would be mandatory required to wear masks. And that would include students in 2nd grade and above, and that would include all employees. And of course, we expected the employee part, but the use there by students was something that I guess we were unknown until we received these local guidelines. And I have a couple of follow-up meetings, as Mr. Cooper knows, as he's part of the task force. We'll be meeting later today to discuss the parameters that Madison County Public Health has placed on school districts. Our intentions are to do 3 things. All along, we wanted to provide options for families. And those options could be an in-person education on campus every day if they so desired. We also want to give families the option to take a blended educational format if they so choose. And so the district has had this in place for about 4 years through London Unlimited, where high school students primarily could come and take a physics class and say FFA, and then they could take the remainder of their courses online. And we would encourage families to do that. We would encourage families to take advantage of any college credit plus options as well. And finally, we want to give families who may not be comfortable sending their children back an option to receive their education all online, sponsored by the district. So we're really moving forward. We do have some mandates that we have to act within, but we are moving forward to try to give families options that they are comfortable with when we restart school in the fall. We also know that through the guidance last week, the governor shared that he is placing some counties on a color-coded tiered system. And so all along, we've been planning if infection rates rise rapidly and this is an important part, if our teacher attendance because of sickness or what have you declines and we're unable to hold classes online with everyone, that we have some options, say some tiers, where we move from all students every day to a blended format, and then if absolutely mandated by the state, all online. Couple final points. We received information from OHSAA that OHSAA is currently planning, and this is of course subject to change, but currently planning for fall sports to take place beginning August 1st, just like they normally do. And so that was the communicated districts as there's been some conjecture about sports flipping seasons and so on. That's not the information that we received just a couple of days ago from OHSAA. I imagine anything can change, but we're about 3 weeks out from August 1st, and that is the information that we've been receiving. I would also say that it is very possible, and we'll talk about this more with the task force, and I've shared this with some of you, that we look at a slight calendar change with the safety and security procedures that we now have received within the last couple of days. It may be advantageous for us to look at delaying the start of school just by a couple of days. We're scheduled to start on August 19th, which is a Wednesday. If we are able to take Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and help prepare our campus and our staff, I think it might benefit us to opening up more smoothly the following Monday, which I believe is August 24th. The options for education, we would look at, we need to receive feedback from families to understand who might want to go completely online, who might want to be completely on campus, and then anywhere in between. So we anticipate a follow-up survey to start to understand where families might be most interested in sending their students. And all of this together, as we mentioned, we're targeting the week of July 13th, which is next Monday. So sometime next week, we would like to provide more guidance to our families about these options and about the protocols, and to choosing one of them as we move forward. Finally, I'd like as we work through these draft plans, the board to approve our final plan at its August meeting coming up. So that's a lot of information. And I know we've been kept in the loop, and I've been talking to many of you individually here as we've gone. But any questions at the, I guess after my update?
How are we on PPE with the mandate that everyone on campus wear a mask? Do we have with the expectation that students would provide, people there every day would provide their own masks, hopefully, but if a child shows up without a mask, are we prepared to provide a mask on a limited basis? Do we have a supply? I mean, I understand the supply chain is still rather strained and difficult, but do we have an opportunity to provide those on a case-by-case as needed basis?
Yeah, we are positioned to start the school year in order to provide masks to students who wouldn't have it. You mentioned a good point. I think from a comfort level, and I also think from a practical level from the district standpoint, encouraging students to bring their own masks is something that would be, I think, probably more advantageous for the student from a comfort level, but also advantageous from the district because we're not replacing those all the time. That's something we're really going to have to monitor. I believe that we have a good stockpile. We've talked about this precipitously over time to get started. And then, another highlight in regards to PPE, as far as other supplies, we have hand sanitizer dispensers that will be in place in each of the classrooms. And then we are buying in bulk from a sanitizer standpoint as well. So we think we can start the school year in those regards, but it will absolutely be something that we're going to have to monitor.
I also noticed in the county mandated the requirement to wear a mask, which I think is appropriate, but the potential to not wear a mask is only associated if you have a breathing medical condition. I'd like to get some numbers. That's what I know we'll have to wait to tweak closer, but there's certainly going to be some students with various disabilities that'll be unable to wear a mask that are not breathing associated. And that's one of the concerns that I have, is making sure that we're able to meet those medical needs of the students who, it may not be a breathing as it's dictated by the mandate, but we'll need to address those for the parents and for those students.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brown. You bring up a really good point. We've had several protracted discussions about if folks have pre-existing conditions and are unable to do that, what the recourse is for doing that. What we're finding is there's a little bit of difference between, say, the state guidance and the local guidance. And then we would like some clarity there so that we have a process in place. It's understood by folks, and we're able to implement that consistently across the district.
So what was the discussion on band and music? Where they're only supposed to be outdoors. What are they going to do during those periods?
Yeah, Mr. Homan.
What was his, whatever.
So the large concern, and especially associated with mask use indoors, is just the close proximity where everyone would be singing, and the use of instruments would perceivably only exemplify the possibility for those particles to be spread throughout the classroom. Having received the guidance just 2 days ago, I think we have just begun to look at scheduling and some contingencies for those types of courses. So I don't have a really good answer. I think that goes yet. I think that goes along with transportation, for example, where mask use would be on buses, but the mandate that we've received here locally is that all of the windows would have to remain open unless raining.
Another question for the start of the school year, we'll have it. I'm assuming that you and Ms. Shoemaker have already discussed this, but the need to, we're going to be planning for 2 different years, one where we're allowed to stay and one where we're not to do that. So part of the initial intake, you mentioned maybe pushing the time back. That in addition to preparing, it's also, I think, getting any new students into the district and then resolving any potential technical issues that families might have for getting ready to potentially work from home for a large portion of the school year. So I just wanted to toss that out as well during our discussions. And I understand the athletics, we've addressed this. That's one of my concerns as you and I talked individually was our coaches are emphasizing this, and I'm hoping that the league is emphasizing this as well. I mean, we've all seen the news where Ohio State has cut all of their athletic workouts due to the COVID rate increase. So how imperative it is that students not play through this, that everyone be open and honest and pressing that on our students. We've all seen young men and women play through pain and play through illness in order to compete and give their teams the best opportunity to win. But this is certainly not the case where that helps. That's actually going to hinder, because it could cause a much severe impact on the team if they do try and not disclose symptoms and so forth. So, and like I said, I know that's being emphasized by our coaches, but I just needed to mention that here. And again, hoping that the league is stressing that to everyone, and our opponents, potential opponents on the field this fall are stressing that as well.
You bring up a really good point, because we know that in regular years, our fall sports begin training over the summer, and the summer is hot. And over the last couple of weeks, it's been especially hot. And so we take extra precautions during any year for when students are participating in athletics to help them during any heat-related illnesses or anything like that. And so we have had some students who just through the course of training have expressed that they don't feel very well. And so we followed our protocols in regards to removing folks from practices, any monitoring or any quarantining or anything like that we would have to do, we've followed. But you bring your point taken. It's very important for us to make sure that we are continuing this, our due diligence as we continue progressing and into the school year. This only compounds when we get into regular flu season months down the road, on a not just an athletic standpoint, but on a school standpoint as well. And so having those set procedures when students express or show symptoms is really important. Making sure that we follow through on each of those is even more so.
I have a quick question with regards to the possibility of having fall sports. Has there been any discussion on guidelines and expectations for the spectators?
Yes, there's been discussion, and I think this summer has provided some examples of that. Certainly anyone that is participating, our guidelines currently are no spectators within practices, those types of things. Out-of-state competitions for things like AAU basketball or in-state competitions for baseball and softball have certain parameters in regards to spectators, limited, very limited indoors, and certainly mandated social distancing out of doors as well. So there's been discussions on that. I would say in regards to sports, our plan will probably be just in line with the OHSAA's guidelines that they'll push out, which are in line with Ohio's restart guidelines that came out several weeks ago, which allowed us to have student athletes back on campus. Mr. Brooks, if you're asking me to look into a crystal ball, I do think that there will be limited, if fall sports are happening, I do think that there will be a limit on spectators.
No, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Kramer before we move on to the personnel items? All right. Thank you, Dr. Kramer. We all appreciate how fluid this issue is, and we appreciate the work that you and all the building teams have put together in putting this forward. So thank you. We'll move on to personnel recommendations 8.1 through 8.3. Do I have a motion to consider those?
So moved.
Mr. Brooks, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Just to conclude that last conversation, and it is around personnel. I appreciate the recognition, but I also appreciate what our task force is doing and our administrative team, and really the relationship that we've had with the LEA and OPSI. Mr. Boyd and I have had a large number of conversations. LEA has been a great partner, along with the administration, as we've looked to plan for the opening of the year. So I did want to mention that. A couple of routine items on here. 8.1 is a resignation. 8.2 is a recommendation to act on a contract. 8.3 sets salaries for administrator and exempt employees for the coming year.
Any questions or concerns regarding items 8.1 through 8.3? Okay. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Holman. Yeah, can't hear you, Mr. Holman, but I can read your lips.
Okay, you were able to get Mr. Holman's vote, Christine?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to board business. We have items 9.1 through 9.3. Do I have a motion to consider board business items 9.1 and 9.2?
So moved.
Mr. Holman, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Brooks? Discussion. This is an addendum to both the treasurer's contract as well as the superintendent's contract. Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Holman,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. We'll move on to board rep and liaison reports. The safety committee.
Same thing as being on the restart committee. Oop. And Dr. Kramer's already informed us on all that, so good to go there.
Thank you. We'll move on to the tax abatement committee.
There's nothing to report either on the tax abatement committee or the facilities and finance committee.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the London Foundation. We've had no business since our last meeting. BAC, we did have a meeting yesterday that Mr. Cooper and I virtually attended. The next meeting is set for October the 13th, I believe. The discussion 14th. Okay, thank you, Donovan. The discussion yesterday primarily revolved around the externship programs that we're working with local businesses and trying to work on improving skill sets for our students as they transition after graduation into the workforce. So, did you have anything else to add, Mr. Cooper?
Perfect. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Blake Johnson is the regional chapter liaison. And so we'll move on to the tolls report. Mr. Brooks?
I really don't have anything new to share since our last board meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm not aware of any need for an executive session. Is there anyone who does think we need an executive session?
No, but I did have a general question if there's no executive session, Daryl.
Okay, no session. What's the question, Mr. Holman?
And maybe I missed it when Spectrum decided to work on the pole outside my house and I had to switch to my phone, but is the state at this point going to be offering up any money to schools for the PPE and the additional cost that's going to be associated, or is that just kind of fluid as well? I've been trying to follow it in the news. But I didn't know if they were sharing anything with superintendents or treasurers a little bit more solid than what we're hearing in the public. No one can hear me?
There, no, I could hear you. I'm sorry, I was muted. I could hear you this time. There's not been anything definitive. I was on a meeting just the other day, and there is talk from the governor's office about releasing some of the financial assistance money that he has to schools, and they're discussing what their methodology might be. And they said, although we can't quote them on this or hold them to it, it could be nearly the amount that we received from the first round of CARES funding. That's as far as that's gone now. We should have more information probably next week, we're hopeful. That's according to Aaron Roush at the Office of Budget and Management. He's pretty reliable. So I'm keeping up to date on that, and I'll pass along any information when I have it.
So then one other comment is, has Chris Cook said anything about London City Schools and voting in November, or is that too far out to even worry about at this point?
No, right now we haven't had that discussion yet. For the primary, we did have that discussion probably about 3 to 4 weeks prior to the primary taking place.
That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and call for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Mr. Holman, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cooper, all in favor?
All right.
The ayes have it. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And we'll hopefully see you at the August meeting.
Okay,
Ms.
thanks.
Brown.
Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right.